In this tutorial we're going to talk about using Maxima, in particular wx Maxima, to check the geometric section properties coming out of Structure's Office. So we're going to talk about, first off, what is Maxima and wx Maxima, and how to install it from this site, how to export results from Structure's Office, where to find the Maxima script, and then we're going to do a walkthrough of the code to show how you have to modify it to get it to do the check, and just executing the code. And we're going to talk a little bit about how it's computed and how the results are computed in wx Maxima and Structure's Office. What's the difference? And we want to note that although it's a check, it's not an independent check. And I'm sure you read the end user license agreement that says that you've got to do independent checks on the software, because it's impossible to guarantee ever that there are no bugs, and the person that wrote the geometric section properties calculations also wrote the checker, so it's possible that the same mistake was made twice. So it's a check, but it's not an independent check. Well, first off, what is Maxima? This is a great tool that for doing computer algebra. It's a computer algebra system for doing symbolic calculations and also numerical calculations. It's well worth the time spent learning to use this tool. It's published under the GNU public license. And as far as what is wx Maxima, that's just a graphical front end. Wx comes from the fact that it used wx widgets. But it's one of the original computer algebra systems. It's based on Maxima, and I've used much more expensive tools for doing computer CAS stuff, and this does everything I want and much more. I highly recommend this software. Now, as we said in the introduction, that you can get it from this GitHub site, and you can just download it by going to the Windows and downloading the latest version. Now, to export to your geometric section properties, you notice there's a button over here on the lower right, and you just click on that to export the shape results. And I'll just put it in my user directory, and I'll call it my J section geometric properties. So you'll find the section properties wxM, which is the wx Maxima section properties calculation script, underneath the installation directory in the Documents folder. So wherever you installed Structure's Office, look in Documents. This is the default location. If I double click that, it opens up the file. And so I want to go to where I just created that file, which is my user directory, was this file here. I want to put that file in there. And make sure you use the / wx Maxima doesn't like the backslash. So I'm under users J section geometric properties. Now if I open that file, open it with Notepad, you'll see what's in there is declaration of how many shapes. We just had one in this case, and now we begin the polygon for, this was the name of that section, and then it's just a bunch of X, Y locations that define the polygon. It goes all the way down to the end here, end polygon statement, and then what was the sign of that shape, whether it's a hole or a positive. Then, because if you output multiple shapes, it's got to do a summation of all the different shapes to get the properties. Then down at the bottom here are the computed values coming out of Structures Office, and we want to do a comparison of calculations done in Maxima versus what we output. So if we just walk down through this script a little bit, you'll see, well, down at the bottom, this is where the checks are done, where it's going through and it's checking each value that it's computing. Now it's working off of a polygon, a single polygon. And so the way section properties are computed in Structures Office is it does a series of polygons approximations, tightening the polygon until it gets the section properties calculations changing very little, and at that point it quits. So what's coming out of section properties is more accurate, but you should find the results very close. And if we look for that check routine, here is the code for the check. So let's go through this checking routine. I assume you don't know Maxima code, but I'll just try and walk you through this. So for each thing that it wants to check, it passes in a line number, which is the end of the set of points in our script here. This is set up above. It's right here. The end of the points is this line number. So it's passing in the Maxima value, and it walks through down through this, the outputs from Structures Office, looking for a match on, it reads in that line, which would be two values, say area and 31.8901, and it checks to see if the name is, say, area. If it is, it sets the Structures Office value to the second value, the 31809. It computes the delta between the Structures Office value and the Maxima value. The Structures Office value, it sets is very small, less than 1 e to the minus 6. Then it sets SL value to 1. And then it computes the relative error. And if it's greater than 1 e to the minus 3, then it prints failed. So it's checked for whatever you were looking at, in this case area. The delta gives you the difference in the values, and then you see the status of failed. So the only thing you need to do is just make sure that you get your file in there, and I like to give a unique name for every one of the files I output, so that I know that what it's checking is what I want it to check. And then when you're set, then you can say evaluate all cells, and you'll see it passed. And also go back, every shape it reads in from that polygon, it draws it. So just look at this image, say, yeah, that's the shape I exported. Okay, to summarize, you can get wxMaxima from this GitHub location. You export the structure's office values by clicking on the Export Shape Results on the Geometric Section Properties dialog box. And then you open up the script, and whatever file name you use to export, you change the name near the top of the script to that same file name. You could keep using the same file name over and over and always export to the same, but there's always a possibility that if you do that, you might make a typing error, run the script, get a result based on a file that you'd used previously and think you'd checked it and you really hadn't. And just make sure to use the / instead of the / in the file name. And then click on Evaluate All Cells in Maxima to execute the script. And then go down to the bottom and see if it says Passed. So that's it for the checking with Maxima. Thanks for listening.